All right, so we're continuing our discussion on coach education. So continuing education, reading blog posts, reading papers, watching YouTube videos, going to seminars. And one of the things that's pretty interesting about coach education is this idea of the actual knowledge that you get from the education may not be what the education is like purporting to teach you, right? So if you go to a seminar, the thing that might be most useful from the seminar might not be the like material that is written on the whiteboard or like the packet that you get or the thing that's explicitly taught to you in a lecture. Rather, by going to this seminar with other high-level coaches, potentially teaching the course, or potentially just in the audience like you, right, is the sort of subtle stuff that you pick up from being around these other coaches who have potentially more experience, who have worked with a variety of high-level athletes, or just kind of like know a bunch of little tricky things about coaching that you don't have the experience yet to actually see. So this idea of like the explicit knowledge of the seminar, like being written out and lectured at you and told to you, and here's the program or here's the movement screen or whatever, being different from the kind of like subtle stuff that you pick up through the osmosis of being around these other coaches, I think is very interesting and makes this idea of coach education like hard to articulate because it's not always obvious what is actually being taught. So yeah, Luke, what are your thoughts on this kind of like subtle distinction between different types of learning from seminars?
I know I've brought this up a few times on these previous two podcasts around coach education, but when I did go to a workshop recently around like lower limb rehab, we were sort of doing hey, my name is blah blah blah, I do this, these are the people I work with, and I'm here for this. And I suppose when it came to me, I was saying, I'm here to get a better at sort of assessing and looking at movement and, all these like very intricate things. And then I just said, and I'm aware that I can also learn from all of you guys and all of the other participants, because usually in these situations, you're actually doing it together and you're like, okay, let's do a forward bend and let's just sort of have a look at this. And then I'm there sort of trying to pick the brains of other people and just sort of seeing what they notice. And that was definitely something I went into the course and I knew, you have like all of the PowerPoint slides sort of set out in front of you, but it's those little details that you're able to pick up around the course, which I think can be really, really valuable. And I think you get to a certain point in your coaching where you do pick up enough like basic technical knowledge, that you're able to then, I suppose, put your energy more into trying to pick up all of these like small little details. And that's one of the things when I teach the weightlifting courses that I try to do. The lectures, generally we have to be like very short. It's a 10-minute lecture. We go over the details, bam, bam, bam. Like we try to keep it very simple. But then when we do the group breakouts, I know that that's like my opportunity to thread in little bits of information, which might not be covered in the material, but it might be something from my own personal experience, or might be something that I sort of picked up and I've been able to like link back into the course content, and then also just stopping people, bringing them in, and being like, okay, let's have a look at this, and just sort of going into, not necessarily going down rabbit holes, but like if there is something that is worth looking into, and just showing people. Just having the flexibility to do that. And I know that when I was originally doing courses and I was leading them, generally it was like stick to the material as best as you can. But now, I'm in a position where I'm able to go off the material a little bit, because I do know that for those people who are not as new to coaching, that is really what actually makes courses very valuable. And it also, I think as well, sometimes you'll go to a course and they will start to explain things, and these would be things that you actually sort of know already, but they're just put in terms and sort of descriptions behind it, and showing you a bit of a system of how it works, when this is all stuff that you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that before, and it sort of reaffirms the stuff that you sort of pick up and that you learn on the job.
Yeah, Luke, I think that the real value in a lot of the seminar stuff can come from just watching a coach with more experience actually coach, and I think that's kind of what you're getting at, where when you're leading weightlifting courses, you have a structure that you have to follow. You have certain lectures that you have to give. You have certain bullet points you need to hit in those lectures. When you're doing, a breakout session, there's a structure to it. There's certain drills that you have to actually teach based upon the curriculum. But for the participants, the value doesn't necessarily come from those specific bullet points or that outline or like, hey, this is a drill you can do, right? I mean, yeah, maybe some of that stuff is helpful. But people are really, really good at mimicking others, right? They actually see how someone with more experience like leads a group session. And there's a bunch of little subtle things, involving the tone of your voice, how you handle someone who's not paying attention, where you stand, how you actually like pause before going into the next part. Like there's all these little tiny things that if you're just in that group session, and even if you're not really super, super focused on actually paying attention to those details, just the experience of being there, you internalize that, and then you're like, you have the ability to mimic that just as a human being who's like this social creature that's really good at being like, oh, this higher status person is doing this thing. I will internalize the subtleties of it and attempt to do it myself. So yeah, I think that a lot of the value actually comes just from that process rather than the actual information that is being given, as part of like the course curriculum.
And I think there's even times when just watching a coach, how they kind of command the space around them, or these things which aren't necessarily obvious unless you're watching for it, but it's like, okay, how are they setting up to watch this person do a lift? How are they then where are they situating themselves as they're giving cues? How are they like approaching a group of people to coach them, and where they can be seen by everyone and where they can see what they need to see, and things like that, where it's, again, there's no clear textbook of, yeah, you should stand here at this point and here at this point. It's like, well, it kind of depends what you're looking for. And if I see someone, doing a jerk, and I'm trying to see their footwork position, and maybe I need to stand directly in front of them or directly behind them because I feel like they're, moving off center as they jerk, or their feet are going too narrow and they're in a straight line, and it's things like that where it's watching other people coach. You kind of pick up on their movements and their spatial awareness, and then again, like when you translate that into what you do, it gives you that chance to think, okay, am I in the best spot for this, and things like that. It's the kind of things that you would only pick up watching a coach as opposed to reading about it.
I think one of the things, and I'm not too sure, just because I haven't really engaged in education, sort of other fields or anything like that. But the people that we're learning from generally on courses, they're people who have been coaches, and they're people who have started, on the gym floor doing the thing, and then they start to, specialize into a certain area, and then, maybe you're sort of engaging with them, even if it's just in like a sort of a classroom setting per se. You're able to pick up stuff because they've sort of been in that situation beforehand, and they're obviously now in a position where they're, years beyond in their career, and they're now delivering information. But it is, I tell you what is interesting as well is sometimes we do get people who come onto the course, and for whether, they haven't done a CrossFit weightlifting course over the years, but they have 10 years experience or something like that, and you can just sort of see the difference in their sort of confidence around like delivering the movement. One of the things I notice quite a lot is we get people to coach each other. We're like, okay, coach each other through the Bergner warm up. You guys got 5 minutes each, and you'll notice that the good coaches will have like certain things where they will demonstrate, then they'll stand to the side, and then they will watch the movement. And then the younger coaches, they'll basically be stood facing each other, and they'll be both doing it at the same time, and they'll also be like leading everyone into each rep. So it'll be like, and 3, 2, 1, go, and it'll be all that. So then people aren't necessarily as sort of reactive to the movement, and then they're sort of, they're anticipating it. And sometimes you'll see, you'll definitely sort of see these like coach isms that experienced coaches have, and then you'll see some people, you can see that they just don't have too much experience. But even then, sometimes you come across people who they've just been doing the same thing for years and they've never really thought about it in a different way, or been told that. And those are usually some of the first things we pick up on is like, okay, guys, when you coach, you coach. When you explain. Don't highlight the faults that can potentially happen. Wait for them to happen, and then fix them, rather than putting it actually into the participant's mind, and certain things like that. So yeah, I think there's the best people you can learn from in coaching is going to be other coaches, and yeah, I suppose like being curious and also like actually being interested in, okay, how can you communicate better? Because I've learned a ton of things like through communicating and that type of things, not from coaches, but from just looking at like how people do public speaking and that type of thing, that there's so many transferable skills from that type of stuff. And I think it's super important, because you walk into like most CrossFit gyms, I will be honest, like I've been walked into a few, and like the explanation at the whiteboard is like, okay, and then we're going to go through this, and it's like dragging on for like 10 minutes, and then you can see people just like floating off or whatever it is. And I remember one of it, and I was like, I think I must have been a couple of years into coaching. I was in Q8 at the time, and I was sort of doing the programming myself. So I was like, yeah, this is so well planned out, and it was just like a ripped off version of Wendler, and I was like explaining it and everything like that. And I do remember one of the other coaches who started working with us, we had been coaching about the same time, but he had a bit of a career beforehand, and I think he coached at CrossFit Central in Austin when it was like, I think it was the sort of first CrossFit gym that was turning over £1 million or $1 million or whatever, and I remember because I was the head coach at the time as well. So I was putting out all these guidelines of like, this is how you structure the class and blah, blah, blah. But he just flipped it on its head, and he got people doing a warm up straight away. He got them like a little bit hot and sweaty and everything like that. And he goes, right, everyone into the whiteboard, take a knee. Now he explained it, and I just saw the class run so much better. So that's a little rabbit hole, but maybe someone can pick up on that. But warm people up first, or do like a bit of a pulse raiser, and then you're gonna have people listening to you a little bit better, I think.
Luke, I think what you're getting at there is something that I've experienced myself from a lot of like coach education, or being around more experienced coaches or more prestigious coaches or whatever, right? Is that you yourself have like gone through this process of gathering information. You've read these blog posts, you've designed this perfect Wendler cycle or whatever, and you're like, yes, this is the way. This is progressive overload. This is the platonic ideal of progressive overload. Like we're just gonna see so many PRs or whatever, right? And then someone who's more experienced just like doesn't care at all about a bunch of the random stuff that you think is really important. Like they either purposely don't care, like might be kind of that experience where this guy's like, dude, you're up there rambling, like what's wrong with you? Just have people warm up and like tell them to lift weights and it's fine. Or they might just not even be aware of some of the more nuanced details that you think are super, super important, and they still just get really good results from their athletes, and it's fine. So I've definitely had that experience of thinking something matters a lot, then seeing much more experienced and successful people just totally disregard something that I think is important, like, work rest ratio, or like a certain kind of like volume balancing, or certain kinds of testing and making sure certain ratios are correct. And you're like, oh yeah, like this is really, really important. We got to make sure all this stuff is good. And then, yeah, other people who are coaching, like have much more experience and coach much better athletes just don't care at all. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm like missing something here. Maybe I shouldn't be super, super worried about this. So I've had that experience for sure.
Have you ever been on the other end of it? Because being the person who doesn't actually care I've done it a few times. It can be quite fun as well. Just like, I'm going to disregard this. this nice warm up.
What do you mean?
I don't like this nice warm up. When I was doing the sort of part-time coaching, and I think I did go in with it was like, oh, I'm doing this for fun and get a bit of a social life, that type of thing. But there was like certain bits of it where I was like, this is a nice warm up, but I didn't give a shit. Let's just let's get people, you know, let's just get people doing a stupid amount of burpees or something like that, because whatever reason.
I got you. So you're like, you were the one who was not interested in the details that were planned for you. You mean?
Yeah. That's pretty much what I was getting at. But I do argue that people would have more fun in my warm ups though. So, but it doesn't matter.
We're not here for fun.
At what point?
We're here for progress.
Yeah, I was going to say, at what point do you value fun over a precise warm up? Because I kind of go back and forth a little bit. Like, I try and make it somewhat fun, but I don't play games. I don't like do that kind of stuff. I do more of a rigid warm up that is specifically for that day.
I think you've like one of the things you got to sort of see where the crossover is, and one of the things I was a bit resistant to, and this was when we were delivering the weightlifting courses, was this idea of like using games to warm up. It doesn't even have to be a game, but if you get a little bit of like interaction, that type of stuff, a simple one is trying to warm up someone's squat. Just rather than going through all of these stretches and doing this hip car at a really slow, slow rate and getting as much movement as you can, it's like, okay, get a medicine ball, get them to sit in the squat, get them to pass the ball, like back and forth a few times, and then go lateral passes, and then do some like rotational passes. And we found that like, I've found that people tend to engage in that a little bit more. It's not as specific as it could be, but it does the job. And I suppose it's just trying to find those like points where you can find that balance, because like everyone plays the pizza game with the upside down ab mats. I fucking hate that thing. Yeah. Like, what's that? like what? Or like they get like a foam ball out and it's like, all right, guys, we're gonna play dodgeball, and it's like half the class do not like that. Like they are like there and like no. I don't
traumatized.
I don't
from
want to do
grade school gym class.
And then you get the other half who are like, oh, this is fucking great, and they get like overzealous about it, and it's like, okay, you just thrown this sort of dynamic of the room out of whack. But yeah,
it's like school dodgeball. It's like the kids that like it just abuse the other ones.
Yep. Yeah. It's like a perfect bullying environment.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to the thing. So tacit and explicit knowledge. I actually Googled this as you said tacit and explicit knowledge, Todd. I actually like misspelled it as well. But I came up with an interesting image on Google, and it had a pyramid, and it says 95% of stuff is through tacit knowledge, and only 5% is through explicit knowledge, which I don't know if that's true, but
sounds like a fake statistic to me.
Yeah. Do you think that when you go to these courses and you pick up this like explicit knowledge, do you think that sometimes gives you like an anchor for something to look out for, and then you're actually able to like look back at your own experience and you're actually able to be like, oh right, okay, I can sort of see how this all like comes together? And it's like almost saying that the explicit knowledge is sort of giving you some guidelines and some sort of goalposts, and then you sort of do your own thing within that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that framing, right? I think that the way that I model this stuff is that you have some sort of internal mental structure, like there's some sort of shape to it, right? It's got, little branches and some hooks and stuff like that. And so this internal mental structure, this model of like how training an athlete through some sort of interval structure works. It's like, all right, some blobby shape. And then as you learn more, this shape adjusts, and then reference experiences come and kind of like hook on to different parts of this. You're like, I tried this and this didn't work at all. And so like this shape over here like needs to adjust a little bit. And, you kind of hook this experience of programming for this athlete on there. And so the idea of this explicit knowledge, meaning the sort of like specific lecture, here's how the alactic system works. Here's this, energy system chart that always shows up, like, okay, you need to have some of that information to kind of like shape this structure. And then that information coming in kind of combined with your reference experiences gives you something that you can actually use moving forward. Right. So in my experience, the combination of the actual explicit knowledge being told to you can help sort of like shape the structure of like what you're thinking about. And then this tacit knowledge coming from either just sort of like seeing and mimicking more experienced coaches, as well as like the reference experiences from trying to apply stuff, that's where like a lot of the actual learning comes from. So I think in an ideal world, those two combine to like give you a much better model of how things are working. But yeah, I think that the main thing that's important is a lot of people can get very, very far and even have better results kind of only relying on this tacit knowledge. And the explicit knowledge that they have is like potentially even incorrect, right? That they like say and do, or they say a lot of stuff that is like wrong. And what they actually do works very well, despite the fact that their sort of like explicit explanation of what they're doing like doesn't make any sense.
Because it is interesting. I've seen certain people to like, yes, there are people out there who have got like their education program or their mentorship program or whatever it is within their coaching. And I do see some individuals and they like overly rely on this sort of explicit knowledge. And then you get others who it's almost like sometimes you just don't necessarily get like a good blend of one or the other. So someone might be like, referring to, say like business coaching or something like that. And then they read like a bunch of business books and it's like, okay, well, according to this, then here's one method you can do, and it's using the 80-20 principle and da. And it's like, and then you might just have someone who's like, doesn't have like sort of these references to books and all that type of stuff, but it's just more of like we just jump on a call like once a week and we just chat shit and we just, you give you some guidelines and that type of thing. And maybe, one can probably do a little bit more of the other, but it's trying to like blend and figure out, okay, would you say, here's a good question. Is it better just to get someone to have a bunch of tacit knowledge and then get them to start looking into things from more of an educational standpoint, or go the other way around?
It's an interesting question. I think that it probably depends a lot on the individual, and sort of like we've been talking about throughout these last few episodes. I think for some people that they don't get a lot out of like the explicit knowledge structure, this kind of like classroom environment of here's your lecture, here's your PowerPoint, here's your packet, here's the theoretical progression you're going to go through, that just like doesn't land or resonate for them. And so they don't value continuing education or like reading blog posts or whatever in the same way that other folks do. And that's like a good decision for them because it just doesn't actually help them. And so I think for most people, being in a position where they can get tacit knowledge through exposure to people with more experience, exposure to reference experiences, et cetera, is going to be just like a much better way for them to improve and learn. And then I do think for some of those people, once you kind of have this model built up of like how things work, the right kind of like lecture or the right kind of framing or someone writing on a whiteboard at the right time can help restructure things. We're like, oh, like I was prioritizing this and that actually doesn't matter. Or, oh, I never actually thought of it that way. That explains this thing that I sort of had some intuition was like a little bit off, like why can I never get anyone to improve their squat depth by like doing ankle mobility? And then someone is like explaining how, like neurological control over the hip musculature, like actually matters a lot in terms of people being able to reach squat depth. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. Like this band distraction shit never works. Like why? Oh, okay. Like I got it. So, the reference experiences there I think are really important. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot here. We should continue this again. We should do another tacit versus explicit knowledge pod.
For sure. I'll try to look at a few more Google images of fake statistics.
Yeah.
Before we do it next one.
Yeah.
I'll bring them to the table.
maybe
let's
bring some kind
let's
of
give a lecture on
graphics
fake
next time?
statistics. Yes, absolutely. We'll give
I'd like to see maybe
PowerPoint
some
heavy
kind of
and
pie
stock
chart.
imagery. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Love it. All right.